Buddy, how are you going? Hi Neha. We're good. I'm good. I have a wine. Everything's going great. We'll just give it a minute, and I think there's maybe a couple more people joining, and we'll get started. Yes, doing very well. Very well. I like a Thursday night because I feel like you can just, you know, Fridays and the weekends just around the corner. I am. So now, guys, don't forget, we do have our Q&A. So don't forget to pop your questions in the below panel. There is the Q&A button, and from there you can submit your questions. So Amanda and Ralph will run through Amanda and Jade will run through their presentations, and then we'll ask questions towards the end. Okay, let's just get started. Now, I am meant to be sharing some slides that have some pretty pictures of product women on them, but I had some technical difficulties today, guys. So welcome and thank you for joining us for Product Women. It's really great to see some of you guys online. I'll see everyone coming online. Hey, Kate. That's normal to have you muted and your screen off. So the default is that we have you all muted so that we can have the conversation and the presentations going. And then that way, everyone can get through the presentations. If you keep chatting and popping your questions at the bottom in the Q&A section, we'll get to them towards the end. Again, welcome. Firstly, a big thanks to Brainmates for hosting this webinar. These guys, Sarah is online, helping us in the background, just running this session. This is the second time they've done this for us to help sort of set it up, and it just takes a huge load off our shoulders. And Amanda and I are just so thankful to the Brainmates team and to Sarah for just always being there and kind of stepping in when we need it. It's been a crazy period, and they just keep coming and showing up and giving us a hand, which is amazing. They do have, just to quickly mention as well, that they do have, so a lot of you have probably heard of their Essentials of Product Management course. I highly recommend it. It's incredible. Obviously in this time, they've gone online, as many of us have, with our experiences as much as possible. So they're really keen to help those at the moment that maybe in a tough spot, but want to keep training and want to use this opportunity while we're all at home to upskill and make sure we still have the finger on the pulse and we're still training. So for a short time, their courses are half price for companies that are affected by the COVID-19 crisis at the moment. It is half price. I know that's crazy, guys. And I know how good these trainers are, and the fact they've been able to transfer that onto a digital, online experience is fantastic. There is a discount as well. So if you put in PM_COVID support there is a discount. I will post that to everybody later, so keep an eye out for that. Okay, so today's session is a fantastic one. We've got Amanda Ralph, who will be speaking about building a personal brand. We have Jade Bennett from Middleton Executive, who is based in Melbourne and does an incredible job. She's really focused on trying to connect the best product people with some of the best companies in Australia. You're in Melbourne and Sydney.
Melbourne and Sydney.
So today's agenda, I've spoken already for too long, so I'm going to actually cut to Amanda, who's going to run through her presentation slides. And then Jade is going to speak for a little while as well. So, and then towards the end at 6:10, we'll do the Q&A. So keep chatting, keep adding your questions to the Q&A, and I'll be moderating them as we go through. And then at the end, I'll be asking these guys your questions. Amanda, I don't know if you need an introduction. You're one of our founders of Product Women, incredible lead product at Qantas at the moment. It's very interesting times.
Interesting times being in the travel and aviation sector, but you know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So those challenges of going through all of that as a product person is going to be invaluable experience for you to share, I think. So take it away.
Thanks, Pearlie, and I'll just see if I can. There we go. Hopefully this is going to work. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes. And I'm
Sure can.
Great. And look, I guess Jade and I are coming at this from like a common area of conversation and focus, but with different perspectives, I guess. My perspective as, you know, someone who's been in product for some time and leading product teams, and Jade from the perspective of, you know, her recruitment expertise and background. So hopefully that dual perspective will give you, you know, some greater diversity of insight around that. So I'll kick off. Just make sure I'm on the right screen here. So today I just want to talk a little bit about your personal brand, how to structure your resume, and specifically what if you're thinking about transitioning into product. We get a lot of members who are, you know, maybe in tangential career roles at the moment and want to get into a more of a product focused role. And then a little bit of a conversation around what are the things that you should probably not be doing and be looking out for. And I guess, you know, it goes without saying that you are your own brand, and your resume also is a representation of your brand. So both in terms of how that's pitched to market, and then the actions and the persona, I guess, that you exemplify through the work that you do and the conversations that you have. So really, if you think about your personal brand, it's finding your uniqueness and building the reputation on the things that you want to be known for, and then allowing yourself to be known for them. So what are the things that really are core to the person that you are, and the skills that you have, and the success that you have in your role? I guess one of the things is, you know, what are you passionate about? What gets you excited? Those things really should underpin your tone of voice and start highlighting you as a brand. What are your key accomplishments? And this is one that I think Jade will talk to more in her session, but you know, it's something I think I've also personally struggled with, and I thought Petra Gross did a fantastic speech and presentation last year at Leading the Product in Sydney about imposter syndrome, and that hesitation that sometimes women in particular have around really showcasing our accomplishments, using the word I, using words like my, I. We tend to be we tend to downplay those, and in terms of highlighting our brand, they're things that we should be celebrating and showcasing. If you think about what a recruiter is looking for, or a hiring business and manager is looking for, they will have a range of different candidates in front of them, and they're looking to try and understand what sets you apart from others who are also looking for that role. What are the things that you're really strong in, and that value that you can bring? So if you think about that as your voice, your resume really then underpins that. And you again need to really think about showcasing your experience. So some of the things that, you know, are fairly obvious but are worth saying again is, you know, who have you worked for and how long have you been there? And I've had lots of conversations with people who say, well, I was only there for a little time. And obviously there are different reasons as to why people might only have a short tenure within a particular role. If it's contract, call out that it was a contracted role. Make sure that that's clear. If you went in with a vision of just delivering to a specific outcome and objective, and then move on, then be clear about that. The key thing is, I guess, what have you actually accomplished in that role, and where you can try and quantify those accomplishments. There's some good examples there that I've put in there around, you know, making in that quantification where you can use metrics. And I know there's always a balance between obviously keeping commercial confidentiality, but at the same time, you can position those things like grew, you know, the market, you know, by X percent, or grew sales, or grew product conversion, you know, by 20% above market average, for example, would be a way that you could potentially counter some of those needs to balance commercial and confidence information and sensitivities with, at the same time, showcasing your accomplishments. Did you deliver something, within budget and within, really strong quality and outcome measures? Was there something that really worked in terms of the sprint processes that you were using, and that you were able to deliver a first iteration really quickly? That's something that I think would definitely resonate in market with hiring managers. The comment there from Zach around don't give me a job description, I really want to stress that. I guess when I'm looking at recruiting and going through people's CVs and resumes, I want to get a bit of a sense of what are their key accountabilities and what are the things that they've actually got experience in, but I don't want a job description. I want to know what they're accountable for or have been accountable for, and what they've actually delivered as part of that accountability. If you think about it, your resume is your sales pitch or your elevator pitch. Often think about this when you're applying for a role. If you can get to an interview stage, obviously you've then got more of a chance to shine. But in that first instance, in some situations, that resume has to really shine and stand out so that it floats to the top against all of the other resumes that are in the mix. So it's really important that, again, you highlight and emphasize what makes you special. What are the brands you've worked with? Some brands will have, real traction in market. Some brands, for example, have a reputation in market of being challenging environments to work within. And if you can demonstrate delivery and demonstrate achievement working within those environments, that's a really strong message that you can send. What are the devices or channels that you've got experience with? Are you fully digital in terms of your product management focus, or are you somebody who's worked across a range of sectors, a range of different channels? And also in terms of device, if you're in a digital space, what are the device sort of capabilities that you've developed? What are some of the tools that you're used to using? Jira, Clubhouse, GitHub, some of those things might be relevant depending on the role. And what are the methodologies that you've leveraged and delivered within successfully? Continuous discovery, is that something that you're familiar with and that you're running? Agile, waterfall, wagile, the list goes on. Are there any achievements or actual awards or patents that you've received or been part of? Really emphasize those. Again, don't be scared to showcase where you've been really strong and where you've got real examples of having achieved. So I think about things like industry awards, for example. Some sectors have a lot of those. When I was in superannuation, there were lots of different award categories for product within the superannuation sector. There's different, digital app development awards, etc. And you can frame that as either having led that piece of work or being part of the team that achieved that, but definitely showcase them. So again, remembering that your resume is the first round of contact, if you like, that the hiring manager and or recruiter are having in terms of their interaction with you, and it's a reflection of you. So think carefully about your layout. Sometimes people want to convey something that is professional and slick, and sometimes they end up coming across as a little bit chaotic and a little bit unaligned, I guess, with that vision. So creativity is great, but don't get too creative with your resume. Again, if you think about timeliness of a hiring manager, if they might have dedicated, for example, 2 hours in their day to go through resumes and read them and get a sense of the candidates, anything that's going to make that challenging for them and distract them is probably not going to be putting your best foot forward. They should be easy to scan. So again, I know from personal experience, I have often read resumes at night with a glass of wine in hand, and if the fonts are too small or the fonts are printed in different coloured ink that makes it really difficult to read, that can be really distracting. try to keep it to 3 pages and be accurate. You know, you have to showcase your strengths and skills, but there's a balance with that around making sure that those are an accurate reflection of what you've delivered and your achievements. And look, spell check, you know, we're lucky to have that, so don't make typos. And be relevant to the job you're applying for. So here's an example. Natalie is a product manager, and she's called out right up front that she loves what she does, that she's delivered multiple products, and she's got experience in working in fast-paced and entrepreneurial environments, ranging from startups to people with over, you know, organizations with over 1,000 people. That's something for me in financial services. I've often highlighted that I am very adept and skilled in product within highly regulated sectors, because when you're talking about things like superannuation and you know, banking, often there's a dynamic there around the need to be able to manage within the regulatory environment that can be quite constraining at times. Again, she's calling out she loves what she does because it encourages her to push boundaries and explore ideas. She's analytical, she likes to solve problems, and she's very comfortable working in cross-functional teams and has great communication and leadership skills. So if nothing else, if I look at that, I get a sense of who Natalie is, what type of environments and organisations she may have been working in, and that she's quite, you know, passionate about what she does, and that she's at the same time focused on using data and analytics to solve those problems and solve them creatively. And obviously then you'd be looking at the underlying detail of experience within that. And so here she's detailed her experience. I think one of the things too is if you're in an organisation where there's quite a lot of opportunity to move into different roles, make sure that you call that out, that you've been with that organisation, but that you've had different successive roles within that. In my case, when I was at the NAB for just under 6 years, and I had 3 roles there, and those roles were all roles that built on the capability of the initial role that I was recruited for. And that's really clear if you look at my CV around why it is that there's been that progression within that organisation. And in this case, in this example as well, that's quite clear. There's links to the features that have been worked on, and it's bullet point, succinct and quantifiable success. So releasing Google Play app within 8 months, leading strategy by evaluating new problems, leading banking product research, etc. So make sure that you're pulling through where you've directly managed things, where you've led or significantly contributed to something, and how you've made that contribution, so that it's really clear to the person reading. You can put your channel experience there, the brands that you've worked with, where you've worked, if that's relevant to the role. So for example, if you're applying for a role that has a multinational global footprint, experience that shows that you're used to working with different cultures and within different markets would obviously be highly relevant. So if you want to transition into product, so at the moment you might be a business analyst, or you might be in another role thinking about coming into product. The thing to think about is, what are the skills that you leverage and you've developed in your current role and the roles prior to that, that are relevant to the role of product manager? Things like analytics, user experience, research and design, your technical skills, ability to prioritize. We know as product managers, a lot of our time is spent influencing stakeholders and bringing through priorities for the business and getting people aligned around common priorities. Can you think strategically? Can you influence? Huge part of the product manager role is influencing all of those diverse stakeholder groups. Are you good on the financials? Brainmates has an amazing course on financial management for product people, and it's something that I've been a huge advocate of for a long time. Is the product managers need to have those core fundamental financial management and commercial skills, because you need to be able to understand how the business is performing, how your product's performing, and where value sits within the business, and then where value sits for the customer. So in terms of branding yourself, you might, sorry, this is not me, this is someone else, but they were saying that, they were a digital entrepreneur. Again, their focus, it's another example, they're focused on solving complex problems. This person has never formally held the role of product, but they, in this case, when they're talking about why they think they're suitable for a product management role, is that they've spent 8 years leveraging those technologies. They've got strong project skills, they're customer focused, they're collaborative and outcome focused, and adept at working cross-functionally across that broader stakeholder group. So even if your role today is not a product manager role and you want to transition into one, you can, with a bit of thought, position it so that you're amplifying and showcasing the skills that are relevant to product management. Hopefully that makes sense. So a little about what not to do. Please don't have one resume for all the positions you're applying for. Customize it. So I gave that example before from personally around financial services. If I was applying for a role, again, in product within financial services that had that strong governance and regulatory lens, that would be something that I would showcase and amplify. In my current role, that's a very different landscape. So it's not something that I've necessarily highlighted as a core feature of my personal brand when I was coming into Qantas. Don't go crazy with the design. It's not a menu, okay? I actually was thinking about this the other day when I was watching in COVID lockdown, I was watching Gordon Ramsay Kitchen Nightmares, and he had this restaurant and they had the world's biggest menu. It was like 50 pages and he was like, that's just insane. How can anyone navigate that menu and manage to that? And I thought, yeah, it's right, actually. It's the same thing with your own personal menu and your resume. Keep it focused, keep it relevant to what it is that you're actually applying for. Get to the point. This other point, don't leave out an intro for each company unless it's a really well-known brand. So not everyone might know what it is that your company or your business does. So have that as part of your introduction against the roles that you're detailing. Don't leave out awards. Don't leave out things which are sort of side projects that maybe you've taken on extra accountability. It might be 10% time, for example, but you've achieved something really fabulous within that and you've built and developed something that is really standout. You might have volunteered as part of some social enterprise project that you do on the side. Those things all have value in terms of demonstrating your skill and your expertise. And don't forget to mention if you actually need visa sponsorship. Put some time into your resume, put your best foot forward. Be selective about the companies you apply for and be honest about the opportunity. Is it something you're excited about? Is it something that you're really wanting to do in terms of your own career aspirations? Maybe talk to a colleague or a friend that you trust in terms of spit testing that and stress testing it. Do research on the company. Make sure you know what their business is and some of the things that are coming through. There's a lot of information out there. It always surprises me sometimes when candidates come through and they really haven't done that baseline homework. And show your passion and eagerness to learn. There's a lot of companies that will take a huge leap of faith because of the potential that they see in you as a candidate. So I'm going to hand over to Jade and she's going to come now with her perspective, which is a different one to mine, which is that of the recruiter. Thanks, Jade.
Thanks, Amanda. Just give me 2 seconds to get my presentation up. Fantastic. So hopefully everyone can see my my screen and my slides. Okay, so I'm also going to be talking about building your personal brand and also a few more insights into building and creating a standout CV. But as Amanda said, coming at it from a recruiter's perspective. So first, I thought I'd give you a quick intro into who I am. So I'm founder and director of Middleton Executive. We're a boutique talent agency in Melbourne dedicated to the product management profession. So we work with startups and scale-ups to help them build awesome product teams. We are based in Melbourne, but we do work across Australia. So I've been building and coaching high-performing teams for over 15 years. And I'm very intentional about diversity in the workplace and also empowering females. Amanda mentioned that females typically undersell ourselves a little bit more, and this is definitely an area that I've seen a lot in the CVs that I receive and review. So really passionate about coaching females, especially on how to use their voice and make sure that we're really putting our best foot forward. If I was to sum myself up in one sentence, it would be that I'm passionate about supporting the advancement of our product and tech community by really helping people excel in their careers. Now, there's two little flags at the bottom there. So I'm originally from the UK, spent the last 11 years in Australia and call it home. So bit of a twang, and that should explain why that is. Okay, so what we're going to look at is, what is your personal brand? What is your sentence? We'll also look at the elevator pitch, a little bit about LinkedIn, and then I'll jump into a few CV top tips, and then we will throw it over to the Q&A. And I've seen some fantastic questions coming through already. So yeah, looking forward to diving into the Q&A. Okay, so you know, your personal brand really is how you sell yourself and how you market yourself. But in order to, I guess, build a personal brand, you really need to do some groundwork. And how you do that is to really think about, what is your story? You know, who are you and what do you stand for personally? What do you want from your career? If you can answer those questions, and for some of us, it may take a little bit longer than others to get to, but I think once you understand those points, you're in a much better position to work on your personal brand. There's no point thinking that your personal brand is X if it's not aligned with who you are or your values. You really want to be authentic and genuine in the personal brand. This is how you will be known and not how you want to be known. So make sure you do a little bit of groundwork in understanding, you know, what you want your personal brand to stand for. Now, in order to really nail your personal brand, there's a key thing that I like to ask people when I'm coaching them, and I ask, what is your sentence? And people look at me and say, what do you mean by that, Jade? Now, your sentence is your North Star on purpose. It's the principles and values that will guide you every day in your decision making. I'll take a step back into history and share a story with you. So there's a lady called Claire Booth Luce. Now, she was one of the first women elected to Congress in the USA, and she is famously known for saying to JFK that he didn't have a sentence. He didn't know what he really wanted to achieve. He was trying to achieve too much. He wanted to be too many things to too many people. And she broke it down and said that, you know, great people have a sentence. So she talked about Lincoln. He preserved the Union and he freed the slaves. Roosevelt, he lifted the USA out of a depression and he ended a war. In my beginning slide, you saw that I had a sentence there, and that is my sentence. I support the advancement of our product and tech community by helping people excel in their careers. I'm passionate about that, and every day when I turn up to work, this is what I'm reminded of. So even during this COVID crisis, when every business is feeling the pinch financially, I'm reminded to show up every day and continue with my coaching sessions and continue to support our community through the good and the bad. So knowing your personal sentence will really help you every day, and it'll be that North Star on purpose. Once you know your sentence, it really makes building out your elevator pitch so much easier. People tend to think that the elevator pitch is something that they can wing, and they'll just wing it. They've got the experience, and yeah, they'll be fine. It's actually a lot harder than you would think. So again, I encourage people to practice, and practice with your loved ones, practice with your friends. You know, it is actually quite hard to sell yourself in a short period of time. Now, an elevator pitch is called an elevator pitch because it's literally the time it would take to go from the ground floor to the top floor in an elevator. So that's probably about 90 seconds or so. So you want to be succinct and you want to avoid waffling. Your elevator pitch really is your story, your background, your accomplishments, and your interest. I advise people to keep it to probably a maximum of 2 career highlights. So the things that you are most proud of. Don't get too technical and don't dive into specific areas unless you're obviously asked to when you're talking to someone. But your elevator pitch is your opportunity to quickly sell yourself in a snapshot. And I like to remind people to ensure that you're telling your story and that you're not just listing facts. That's an important part. It's your story, so it needs to flow as opposed to just being dot points and a few facts. I just wanted to bring attention to your personal brand is more than just your CV. It's actually your social and online presence. And I just wanted to highlight the power of LinkedIn here as well. There's data in the market that talks to, 92% of recruiters use social media. Now that's either to attract and source candidates or to vet them. And 87% use LinkedIn specifically. So in a hugely crowded market, it's important that we take the time to stand out. And there's some real basic little tips that I wanted to share. Make sure that your profile on LinkedIn is complete, and make sure that you have a profile picture. Make sure that your introduction is there, and your introduction should be, again, your story. Tell your story, bring it to life. There's obviously the career achievements and your roles, and also your interest. One of the things that I think's happened with LinkedIn, and I've been fortunate enough to do a huge amount of work with LinkedIn in my previous roles, is that LinkedIn was never created to be your online version of your CV. It is a professional networking platform. So your Facebook is for friends and family, and LinkedIn is for your professional contacts. So although there is an element of your career in LinkedIn and it can look like a CV, people have thought it is just their CV, but it's not. It's your online personal brand. So make sure it comes to life. Make sure that you stand out, and make sure that your story is authentic. I had an example not long ago where I had shared a fantastic product manager's CV with a hiring manager. I thought, wow, this CV is amazing. They're going to nail it. And within seconds, the manager came back and said, can't wait to meet this person. Let's book it in for tomorrow. They're a DJ. And I was like, they're a DJ? And I went through their CV and I was like, where did they get that? How do they know this person to CV is a DJ? So I jumped on LinkedIn, and in their personal summary, they had that was a hobby for them, and that they had played at some big festivals and clubs. And it just goes to show that hiring managers do look at LinkedIn, and they actually want to see that they're getting more than words on a piece of paper. They want to learn a bit about who you are. So, really do take the time to look at your LinkedIn profile and make sure that you stand out from the crowd. Okay, so your CV. As Amanda mentioned, your CV is your selling tool. It is your opportunity to sell yourself to a prospective employer. So it's really important that you take the time to perfect this tool that you have. I break the CV down into a couple of sections. So the first one I call the bones. This is the structure. We need to make sure that you have a really good template, and that template should be clear, simple, easy to read. You need to make sure that it's not too noisy or too crowded. You need to make sure that there's not a lot of white space. So keep it really clear and succinct. Amanda touched on, keep it short. We really want a CV to be 2 to 3 pages maximum. your CV, again, is your highlights and your accomplishments, not a list of duties. Communication is absolutely key. This is your first interaction with a prospective employer. If it has spelling mistakes, typos, grammar errors, attention for detail is limited, it really speaks volumes to the quality of your work. Now, as somebody that reviews CVs on a daily basis, and when I work with managers, if people have sloppy CVs, we tend to think, well, that's a reflection of their work. If they can't take the time to sell themselves effectively, what are they going to be like in work? So I really can't emphasize enough the importance of making sure that you get the bones right. Make sure that it is clearly presented, that there's no spelling errors, and that it's easy for the reader to read. The best way to do that is to use bullet points. Try and avoid long, wordy paragraphs. The data suggests that the average CV reviewer will spend about 20 seconds scanning a CV. If they don't see something that catches them straight away, they'll flip to the next. So, try and keep it short and succinct. Now, something that I'm quite passionate about is a killer personal summary. I tend to see a lot of these at the beginning of a CV that can sometimes be a little bit waffly, and it has very vague general statement. You want this to be a quick snapshot of who you are, what you stand for, and it needs to be really clear. You need to quantify your achievements. So it could be something like senior product manager that has reduced turnaround time by 20%, or you build mobile apps and increased revenue by 90%. Keep it short, keep it succinct, and make it quantifiable. Avoid these vague, waffly statements that don't really say much to the reader at all. But a killer personal summary can really grab the reader's attention and secure you that interview. Okay, so then we're really on to what I call sort of the meat of the CV. This is the nitty gritty. I really need to emphasize here that your CV should be accomplishments, not duties. We want your CV to be impactful. We don't want a list of tasks, duties, responsibilities that a company has told you to do, especially if you're a product manager or any profession for that matter that's been in the industry for a long time and you've had the same roles. More often than not, your responsibilities are going to be similar from organization to organization, and what you end up with is pages of dot points that are basically just copy and pasted from each role. So avoid listing your duties and tasks, and really make it accomplishments based. What did you achieve? So really, your CV should be demonstrating to the reader that you had an impact. It should show that you had leadership skills. Now, you don't need to be a manager to have leadership skills. It can be influencing skills. It can be driving direction. It doesn't need to be a formal title to demonstrate leadership. You want to demonstrate from your CV that you've got initiative, that you've got a real passion for technology. We're all in the tech space, so you want your passion for tech to shine through. Obviously, if you have any technical skills, you do want that to be included in your CV. And again, as I mentioned, you really do want to have attention to detail. It speaks volumes to the quality of one's work. Okay, so again, with impact, the language that we use in our CV is so important. We really want to make sure that we're using the I word. This is your CV. It's not your team CV. It's not your previous employer CV. It is your CV. Now, women more than gents out there are guilty of avoiding power words. We like to downplay our own success. We're mindful of not being boastful or bragging or marching to the beat of our own drum. But it is really important that in your CV that you are selling yourself to an employer. So you want to make sure you're using power words. Things like I achieved, I implemented, I delivered, I solved, I established, the outcome was. Using this language will really have an impact on the reader and go, that step forward to getting you in front of them. Okay, and as I mentioned, your CV does need to be accomplishment based and not responsibility driven. So the difference here would be responsibility driven is where you just listing your task and your duties. So that could be, I built a new payment feature for a mobile app. Okay, that's great that you built that, but why do I care as the reader? What was the benefit to your organization that you did that? So the difference between making something a responsibility driven CV and an accomplishment driven CV is by just adding on why that was important. So your dot point could be, I built a new payment feature for our mobile app. I managed its development right through to launch, which resulted in X million dollars of additional revenue for our mobile products. That is a powerful statement that tells the reader exactly what you did, why it was important, and what you achieved. So, try and make sure that your CV is more accomplishment driven than responsibilities. And then finally, my tips are, do make sure that you include a personal statement, do include a skills section, and definitely include any personal projects or URLs that you have. Don't have career objectives in your CV, and don't have a long list of responsibilities or tasks, and avoid putting in pre-professional career history. We don't need to know that you had a Saturday job in Bunnings, or you did X, Y, and Z. We don't need to know that at this point. If you're in your career and you've got 10 years or more, I understand that you could be racking up a few different careers, or you could be having multiple positions on your CV. Once you get to that 10-year mark, it becomes less relevant what you did 15 years ago, because technology changes so quickly, and what someone did 3 years ago is quite different to what they're going to be doing today. So if you do have a long career history, you can just condense that into a nice table at the back of your CV and simply have the dates, the company, and the role. And by just condensing it down, it will keep your CV short and succinct. It's easy for the reviewer to see, oh yeah, this is what the person did pre 10 years ago, and if it's something that they want to elaborate on, they will definitely do that during the interview. So I hope these tips have helped provide a little bit of clarity and some tips on how to rework your CV. If anybody would like to continue the conversation offline, I'm really passionate about personal brand and helping people have a killer standout CV. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or email me directly, jade@middletonexec.com.au. I'm more than happy to continue the conversation offline. But now I'm really keen to answer your questions and get stuck into the Q&A section.
Thanks so much, Jade. That was awesome. Okay, so we do have a number of questions that have come through. One of the top questions, actually, just to make sure I address it, it was actually around just the recordings and the slides, which is obviously evident of just how valuable people found those presentations, that they want those as a reference tool. So I think we will be sharing the slides. There will be a link to the recording, and we'll share that to the meetup, our RSVP list after this. So.
Carly, I can just add to that. If anybody wants some tips on how to create that killer CV, I do have a document that I've created that I can share with people if they want it.
Oh, fabulous. So what we'll do is also provide your details on how to access those in our meetup chat post email as well. Great. Okay, excellent. Okay, so thanks for your questions, guys. Let's go with the first one from Maria. Thanks, Maria. So this one is, any advice to avoid sounding like a cliche, using words like cross-discipline, customer-focused, stakeholder management? These sometimes sound like they've been put in without much substance. So I'll start with you, Jade, and then I'll ask Amanda the same question.
Yeah, look, that's a great question. And I think I touched upon that earlier in the presentation. I think keeping things specific and quantifiable will avoid that waffle and the noise. General statements about hardworking, or, you know, just vague statements don't really say much. So I think you can avoid those sentences and statements by keeping it specific and quantifiable as to what you did. And that would be my tip.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Amanda, do you have anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I think maybe they can come across as a bit of a cliche, but I think if you contextualize them, so for something like stakeholder management, if you think about the types of stakeholders that you're routinely involved in having to engage and influence, that can be relevant. So, for example, depending on the role, I might put in something there around the fact that I'm actually very comfortable and experienced in dealing with board level executives, regulators, working across the breadth of the business. I think that's something that is relevant. So if you contextualize and maybe add something to them to give a bit of a flavour or sense of who those stakeholders are, or what does customer focus mean? Is that you actively run customer discovery and customer insight to bring a customer view to the problems that you're solving as a product person. That's obviously going to have much more impact than just saying I'm customer focused.
Yeah, so avoiding those broad terms and trying to get a specific around quantifiable measures and who you actually spoke to as part of a stakeholder management, as an example. Excellent. Okay, thank you. That's awesome. Okay, so the next question is thoughts on writing a cover letter for a PM position and whether you think it's important. Does a recruiter actually read the cover letter? Jade, I feel like that. I'll start with you on that one.
Look, this is a hotly debated topic amongst people. I personally don't think cover letters get read, and I don't think there's much value if you have a quality CV, because that will speak volumes. What I do see happening more is video cover letters, and I am a huge fan of video cover letters. I know it's awkward for people to overcome some of their self-fear and get in front of a camera, but if you're applying for a role and they give you the opportunity to upload a video cover letter, I highly recommend you do that. It lets your personality shine through. It gives them a real insight into your demeanor and who you are. And they typically only need to be about 60 to 90 seconds. So I think video cover letters can add value. Written cover letters, not so much. Again, like I mentioned, people only spend about 20 seconds reviewing a CV. So I doubt cover letters do get read. So, but obviously there's a caveat to that. There's no one size fits all. If the company specifically asks for a cover letter and for you to address some key selection criteria, definitely do that. But if it's not requested, then I'd leave it out.
There's just a quick follow-up question around that as well. Like, do you have a recommended format you would advise? Is it a YouTube link or attached in a letter? Is there a general convention to this?
It depends on the company. So some companies have software that does it. So if you're applying to them direct online, there'll be a button that you can click to record it. So it's pretty easy. And other companies just pick up your mobile phone, and make sure you flip it to portrait, pop it down so you're not shaking when you're holding it, stand it on something, and just record yourself. Do a couple of takes. Top tip, put it down, press record, wait for 3 seconds, get yourself a little bit of running, do your intro, your bit about yourself, let it run for an end, so then you can quickly edit. So you avoid that pushing and pointing and stuff. But yeah, hope that answers.
That's a great tip. Thank you. And I imagine that elevator pitch is also super important for that.
Yes.
Yes, for that video cover letter.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
My hot tip is to make sure that snap cam's turned off when you're doing your video cover letter.
Another great tip. Okay. Oh, this one is, I think, a really relevant one for now and a bit heavier now. So how do you explain redundancy as part of a job application?
I'll have a go at this as someone who has been made redundant. So in my career previously, I generally didn't call it out in terms of my actual CV that I submitted, but I'm very transparent about that in the conversation with either the recruiter or the prospective employer. I think redundancy, sadly, is just something that is common, and it's not a reflection of somebody's skill level or achievements. You know, restructuring happens, lines get drawn across a company structure, and you know, many people are, you know, impacted in that. So my approach is generally to be fairly front-footed about that in the conversation. Jade, I don't know if you've got a different perspective to that.
No, I completely agree with that. Unfortunately, I think there's a little bit of darkness around redundancy, and people tend to think, oh, I don't know if I should talk about it. There absolutely isn't. Redundancy is never a reflection on someone's performance in the role. As Amanda mentioned, it's a business decision. It's orgs, reorgs. And so I think you don't necessarily need to put it on your CV, but I think as soon as you talk to the recruiter or you talk to the hirer, be open, be transparent. There's nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to hide behind. I think just, yeah, as Amanda said, it is what it is, and it's not a reflection on you or your performance in the role.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Okay, next question from Jennifer. What's the best way for a PM who has been working in a smaller, lesser known startup to build his or her personal brand and move to companies with a more established product team? Jade, why don't you start with that one, and then Amanda, we'll go to you after that.
Yeah, look, with that's actually our catchment. We work with a lot of product managers that are in smaller, lesser known brands that want to, you know, make that move into a bigger brand. And I actually think working in a small startup, you actually wear so many hats and you build up so much skill and experience that I think it's just making sure that it comes out in your CV. And as I mentioned, that you tell your story. I think you obviously want to do a fair amount of work on your personal brand. So again, coming back to your LinkedIn profile, really making sure that your story is coming alive there and that you don't downplay what you did, because in a much smaller company, you probably have more responsibility and been working across a wider range of tasks. So just make sure that you're really selling yourself. Definitely get out in the community, get out to the meetups. You know, if there is a particular company that you're interested in, and I've had candidates reach out to me and say, oh, I know you recruit for Seek or Campaign Monitor or Safety Culture, I'd love to work there. I say, okay, well, go to their events, you know, they host events, they sponsor events, get yourself there, build a profile, connect with PMs there. One of the things about the product management community is that people are so friendly and everybody is more than willing to offer support and help. So if you do have your eye on a particular company, reach out to somebody there, ask them, can you shout them a coffee when we're allowed to have coffees again, or Zoom, and just build connections.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Virtual coffees, guys, for the time being.
The way forward.
And, you know, it's an incredible community in Melbourne, so, you know, never be afraid to reach out.
Ellie, just follow on from that, two things, I guess. One is that's where the call out for me in terms of making sure that in your CV that there is a little intro line about the organisation you've worked for, particularly if you've worked in those startup, smaller environments that are doing amazing work but are probably lesser known in terms of brand in market. So it's really important that you are clear about what the sort of focus is of that organisation and the role that you're in. There's a follow-up question around the opposite, which is when you've worked in large organisations. I think Serena's called that out, and the view and perception of them being less nimble and agile. Certainly that was something for me, and I know NAB has changed incredibly as an organisation from when I was there, but it did have a bit of a reputation of being incredibly hard to get traction and actually deliver things quickly. I think the way they've reorganised their business, that's a different dynamic today. But one of the things that I leveraged in the conversations I had was about the fact that I had actually managed to achieve and deliver within that context. And that was a real seen and perceived to be a real advantage, I guess, and a real achievement on my part. So talking about delivering things within time, you know, within time frames, delivering things under budget or within budget, making sure that there was a clear sense around being able to navigate the complexities of those very layered organisations, but at the same time, solving problems and honing in on the things that were priority and actually delivering those. So I think that can actually be a huge strength in somebody's core, you know, pitch and core brand presentation if they've got that. Likewise for management consulting, it's around what you've been able to deliver and help your client do. So again, it's a slightly different framing, and having worked in a big 4 professional services firm as well, I get how that works. But again, it's like, what's the value that you actually helped that client deliver, and what was your role in that?
Just realised I was on mute. Yeah, I love that you gave both those dimensions. Thank you, Amanda. We are actually at nearly 6:30. So I'm going to ask one last question, if both Jade and Amanda don't mind, and then we'll wrap up. So the lucky last question is, who makes a good and appropriate reference? Does it need to be a past direct manager? PMs work with or for so many stakeholders in the business, it can be hard to find someone who can speak to the full scope of experience. I might get Amanda, do you want to start with that one, and then Jade can answer after you?
Yeah, sure. And just to call out, I'm sure you'll loop back as well, Pearly, but anything that's been unanswered, what we'll probably do is go through them and come back with some answers for those questions as well. I think with the reference, one of the things that I always look for is somebody that actually has experience in terms of my achievement and what I've been able to deliver, and someone that can reinforce that messaging and have real and tangible examples of what they've seen or what they've experienced in terms of either being my people leader and watching me deliver those things, or being part of a team, or, you know, I've used people that have reported to me as referees to talk to my, you know, people leadership skills and what they've found valuable in that. So I think, again, it's something you should put some thought into, and those referees might change depending on the role. So what's the role that you're going for? What's the most relevant experience? What are the most relevant achievements? And who's best placed to have a conversation to endorse and to support you in that?
Great answer, Amanda. Jade, did you want to add anything to that quickly?
Yeah, great answer, Amanda. I think, you know, definitely you want people that can talk to your experience, and as you said, you know, what's the role looking for? From a recruiter's perspective, we definitely do want line managers. We want someone that can actually talk to the performance metrics of how successful you were. And although a peer reference is fantastic, they're not going to be able to talk to your individual performance metrics and whether you were successful at those. So we do need managers, at least one manager is typically what we would ask for. Ideally 2 managers. Now they don't have to be direct managers. So depending on the company, I like to get your direct manager, so head of product, CPO type, or an engineering manager. So given that product managers do work very closely within the engineering and tech space, a lot of my clients in the startup and scale up space do want to know how people work cross-functionally. So it could be someone from the sales and marketing team. It could be somebody from, you know, the engineering dev team, but just getting that diversity of perspective really helps. But also from a management perspective, we want to know how we can best manage you in that new organization. So, you know, what does a manager need to be like to get the best out of you? What are your developmental areas? So again, bringing it back to, they do need to have been a manager at, you know, one of them needs to be a manager.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's just very practical advice. That's fantastic. Thank you. I think we'll wrap it up there. There's so many questions. I am always so tempted to just keep going, but we will leave it there.
Just on that, really, I can see that there is actually a lot of questions that we haven't managed to get to. So what I was going to do is I'll take these questions and I'll actually answer them in video format. So I'll get all of the questions and I will answer every single question in a video format, and I will get it out on social. So connect with me on LinkedIn, follow Middleton Exec on LinkedIn, and we'll make sure that we're getting these videos out so that people can get the answers. And if anyone wants to bring it up offline, then yeah, happy to do that.
That is so fantastic. Thank you, Jade. Do you want to just have your final words on I guess, building your brand, and just a final message to everyone from the Product Women group here?
Look, my final message would be on having a voice and being proud of your voice and being authentic to who you are. And women especially, we shy away from that. And unfortunately, there are a lot of biases out there. But I think, you know, find your voice, be authentic, nail your sentence. And I think once you do that, you'll just grow and flourish at selling yourself and marketing yourself.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thanks, Jade. Amanda, any final words from you?
Yeah, look, I totally endorse, you know, everything that's Jade said. I think one thing for me was my father is a really, you know, he's retired now and retired for quite some time, and he worked, interestingly, for one company for 37 years. But when I started out in my career, he said to me, Amanda, don't get complacent, don't get lazy. You need to work at your brand and you need to work at positioning yourself. Even if you love the job you're in, even if you intend on staying with that one company, as he did for 37 years, he said, it's good practice to stress test your purpose, stress test how you position yourself in market. And it's something I've taken on board from those very early days when I actually started my career as an academic, believe it or not. And I think it's really good advice. Even if you're really happy in the role that you're in, it's a good discipline to just regularly review and sense check, am I actually demonstrating and am I actually presenting the person that I want to be presented as? Is my brand conveying who I am and the purpose that I have in my career?
I love that advice.
I know, that's so great. Thank you. Thank you, hashtag boss ladies, says Alicia. Thanks everyone for joining us for today. I took a lot from that, and I hope that you did too. Like we said, we will send through all the information as much as possible in the follow-up email with links to the recording, the slides, reaching out to Jade, and also how to access the follow-up Q&A that Jade's offering as well, which is fantastic.
Keep your eyes peeled for the next meetup. We've got a couple of things in the works, so hopefully we'll announce that soon.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I look forward to seeing you guys then. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye.